helping you crack the code to productivity. Every Wednesday's our community.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session on the Productivity Enhancement Clinic. Today, we are going to be talking about customers and the customer emotions and how you can actually tap into the power of customer emotions to enhance loyalty and upsell. The session is actually packed with a lot of insights. So if I am not clear or if you need some more clarity, please pause me and ask questions or probably type it in the chat window and my VA can actually answer those questions after the clinic is over. So let's start. So what are we going to cover today? Is the same thing, like we're going to set the agenda, set the scene. We're going to dive a bit into understanding emotions and how that can enhance, or the knowledge of emotions can actually help you enhance your experience or the experience customers have with your product or service. And I'm going to talk about a specific business case where customers have actually used this to build a plan or an approach to enhance the customer experience. And there'll be some key takeaways that you can use to apply in your business. Now, for people who have joined in, or new, I just want to introduce the framework that we actually operate on. Apologies for people who have already seen this, just bear with me. So what we do is basically we focus on three things in our approach. We say for any business to be effective, we need to have a strategy. But having a great strategy is not enough unless you have employees who can execute that strategy very well. Having a great strategy and great employees is also not enough because you need to have customers to help you to grow the business. Because without them, business does not exist. So what we're doing is basically this area where the customers and employees intersect. That's what we call as the delivery. And this is where whatever the employees are doing to deliver the product or service, any interaction comes there. Then the second component is the intersection between strategy and employees, which we call as the engagement piece. Because if employees are not engaged with the strategy, they are not going to be delivering. The third bit is what we call as the alignment. Here, we are saying that the company, the organization strategy should align their needs or the plans with what the market wants. So it's not a question of let's develop this and they will come and buy it. You tap into what your customers want to understand their met and unmet needs so that you can start building products and services which your employees can deliver. And the fourth bit is what we call as the core. This is where we see leadership sitting. And the leadership then can propel all this to ensure that it moves in the right direction. So people who know me know that I always end up creating acronyms. So we say we deal with the leadership. The leadership deals with these areas to ensure that the organization is successful. Now let me put a bit of context to what we are trying to achieve. We're talking about emotions. So let me just break it into a simplistic framework. So if you look at an organization, you have I, who's the leader, and B is basically the team or the employees. Then there is something that happens inside the organization, and there is something that happens outside the organization. So as a leader, how you think and feel actually impacts how people perceive your behavior on the outside. Let me say, how you think and feel on the inside as a leader comes out as a behavior which people perceive on the outside. And how people perceive your behavior impacts how we as employees think and feel. And that shapes your employee experience, that shapes your culture, and that's happening inside the organization. That then impacts the process, the customer experience, and it is impacting people on the outside who are your customers. Now, if you actually go in the reverse way, how your customers think and feel is impacted by how your employees create an experience. So we are going to be talking about that aspect today. Now, when we look at organizations, I mean, we have a customer base because we expect the customers to perform. We want business from them. And customer performance happens only when the behavior is favorable to what we do or say. And when we started looking at customer experience or customers as an area to focus, the first thing that, if you remember, people started talking about consumer behavior and all that. This is the 80s and 90s. Then we started talking about how do we engage them. This is diving a bit deeper. Your behavior is actually caused or is the result of how you think. You decide to engage. That's a conscious decision. And that is where customer engagement strategies kick in. And people who have read Daniel Canahan's book know that he classifies this as a system to thinking. Now, how you are engaged is impacted by how you feel, which is your experience. And that's called the system one thinking, which is voluntary. It happens without you even having to think. So, if you want your customers to buy, which is the performance, you need to actually get them to demonstrate the right kind of behaviors. For that, they need to be engaged with what you're trying to do or sell, for which they need to feel that that is the right thing for them. But now we have moved beyond customer experience. And what we are doing now is looking at the conscious and the pre-conscious, at the subconscious levels. At a deeper level, how and what influences us. And by addressing those, that is where you start putting the right kind of interventions, initiatives in place to enhance your customer experience. Now, when we look at the preconscious, the root cause of everything is fear. And that is what actually makes us to do things or not to do things. Now, of course, if you want to address that fear, you need to understand what are the fears that people have, and you need to address that. But to address that, what you need to do is you need to actually build trust. Because if they trust something, they are likely to be less afraid. If it's a product, building that trust. If it's a brand, building that trust is important. Now, when it comes to service delivery, or when they have a complaint, how do you deal with it? Then you need to have the second component, which is empathy. So when you have an element of trust and empathy operating in the right balance, it addresses fear. And that then creates a great experience, which then makes you feel loyal, feel committed, feel satisfied. That then builds the engagement, which then builds the right kind of behavior so that you can perform. Now, we're going to be looking at fear as one of the core things that we need to be understanding. So, what are the things that actually make us afraid? When we actually look at things, first thing is, if I buy this, will I become poor or will my resources go down? That's something you are. It's a loss. That actually triggers a fear in you. The second one is, okay, I'm buying it. Will it work for me? That's the second thing. This is the belief you have about that product or service's efficiency and effectiveness to help you solve your problem. The third fear is, what if I make a fool of myself by going and being the first one to buy this? So that is the status. And a lot of people look at that. That is one of the prime fears that is there. Then the fourth one is, how easy or difficult will it be for me to move from here to there? Oh, is it a lot of effort? So the associated pain, the energy that is required to transition from one to another impacts how you would look at things in a certain way. Then, if I am doing this, what am I going to lose? What is the sacrifice I'm going to make? Times of effort, time, money. So that is the other fear that drives people. And then, what if I do this and if I don't get the results what I want to? So the regret is another big thing. So when we are trying to understand how people feel, we need to understand what are their fears and use that insight to then go and address those fears. So, without addressing the fear, you cannot make them feel valued or respected. Now, we're going to dive a bit deeper into this. If you look at this, fear is one component, and we don't think and act in two dimensions. We think in three or four dimensions. When I say four dimensions, we include the concept of time. So, for us to overcome fear, we need to trust that product or service, as I mentioned earlier, and also we need to demonstrate empathy. So, when you then start looking at this, so for each of the fear elements that I listed, you start thinking, what can I do to build trust to overcome that fear? What can I do to build empathy or demonstrate empathy to overcome that aspect of fear? But people who have joined earlier in my one of my clinics know that we look at people in a slightly different way. So, you know, as human beings, we all have multiple things that drive us. But if you look at the core drivers, this is what we actually use. This is something similar to your disk profile or your, MBTI and so on and so forth. So for the, for sake of simplicity, we're just going to be using this to demonstrate how you can start using this insight to address fears. So we all have a hero in us. We want to win. We want to be successful. Now, you also have an engineer in us who wants to plan, who wants to organize. Of course, there might be people who might be more meticulous in planning, and there might be people who might be more meticulous and fiercely competitive about winning. And we also have the empathy component, which we call as the angel, where you want to care about people, teams, your family, relationships. So that element is also there. And we also like to be a discoverer, be the first one to buy the iPhone or the Samsung phone or whatever new gadgets, or try different experiences, enhance, be tap into our creative things, make us feel valued and important. So these are the four drivers that we all have. Now, the mixture of these drivers is going to be different for different people. Someone might have more of a hero, less of an angel, less of an engineer, more of a discoverer. Someone might actually have a balanced view for all of this. Someone might be more of a discoverer. Someone may be more of an engineer, then a hero, then an angel, and a discoverer. So, like your MBTI, you can come up with multiple combinations. So you can see that this is what drives everyone. Every individual has got all these four things. Not only that, we also have an emotional component and a rational component that drives these four things. So suddenly you start seeing things much more in a much more sophisticated way. That's how I would put it. So you can then start seeing if every individual has actually got these four types of drivers and they are rational and emotional in these personas, we need to then start addressing or building our messages, our solutions to address the fears that each of these styles or drivers have. For example, hero, the fear is losing. We talked about loss earlier. So anything that you say should actually address the fear of loss if you're talking to a hero. Uh, for an engineer, it's about stability. So what if things don't work? What will I have to lose? That is where stability kicks in. Now, when you message, build your product, you need to ensure that it is robust, it is meticulously planned or executed efficiently. For an angel, the fear is isolation because they are people driven. So if you're someone who's an angel, basically that's your prime driver. You want people to actually recognize you. So the question of status, will I look like a fool? Respect. What will happen if things fail? That's the fear that drives them. And for a discoverer, it's insecurity because I'm trying to do something different. So what will people think? Boredom kicks in. What do I have to do to compromise this? All those things come in. So when you're creating a product or a service, you need to start looking at these aspects. So when you start doing that, and you need to remember every every individual has got all these four drivers, but there is one primary driver that you know is there that dominates the other three. Now, when you are creating a product or service, it's always important to bring all these four types into your consideration and start addressing the fears that they would have. What we do is normally we ask people to go through this and their customer types, and then we ask them to make a list of the fears of all these four drivers, and then see if their customer types are part of this, this set where you can match the whole thing. Now, when you do that, you start building satisfaction, commitment, and loyalty. The messages, the product, the service delivery, everything happens that way. Now, we what we have done is basically in our journey, we have actually classified customers into 8 different categories based on the levels of satisfaction, commitment, and loyalty. So the intention, what we say is always move these 2 categories of people either here or here. And ideally, if you can bring them here, that's where you get great revenue. And the red ones are the ones where they actually suck up a lot of revenue, suck up a lot of your time, don't give you a lot of business. Now, there is a reason for that. By understanding and ensuring what you're offering, if it's addressing their fears, then they can be moved in either or directions. Now, what we do is basically we start using all this insight to see how we can build our customer loyalty and commitment. So, the journey mapping exercise that we do, we start with the basics where we say, okay, what are the profiles of customers that you serve? What are the key segments that they operate? Create a persona. So that's the first thing that we do. And then we ask them to create a journey. Where does the journey start? Is the question that we ask. Does it start when they're thinking of your product or service, or can you influence them prior? And we get the companies to bring all the existing data to the table, and they start looking at building the fundamental building block. Now, once you do that, then you start looking at how and what areas can be addressed, what fears would be emanating for the customer types, and what can you do differently. So if you have those fears, remember we said that is the deeper level. By doing and addressing that fear, you can actually make people feel comfortable. And you can do that by changing the humanics and the mechanics. Humanics is the people side of things, mechanics is your process. We get them to look at the key touch points. What are the areas that the customers have come in contact with your process, or people, or both? Understand where things are working or not working, and use that to see if it is actually what kind of fear gets triggered, which means you can then understand what are the things you need to do or say or build in process in your process, or train your people to address those fears so you can actually make things easy. And the one thing that we always say is the effort to transact. How easy is it to do business with you? That is again, we start building that. Now, using that, we then build a map. Now, what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to walk you through a map that we normally use, which we built for a hospitality client. And this client, basically, if you look at it, there are various stages. So they said pre-awareness, like where do you book? I mean, when you are, where does the journey start? Is the question which I said, which they asked, and they said, our journey starts even before they think of booking a holiday. And they had, this is basically what do you call, a big hotel, but it's a single hotel which has got multiple attractions around it. So they had a constant stream of people coming in, but they wanted to actually ensure that they have great experience, and so on and so forth. So first thing they did was, where do we actually, demonstrate that we are good and capable, and where can we actually be present so that even before they think of the holiday, our brand image, our values are embedded. So they went into places like the tourist attractions. There, when you go there, they had a partnership with them. So they could actually do some branding and things like that and advertisements in the tourist attractions website. Then they also went to places like Mumsnet and a couple of other sites where they started advertising about where their facilities are superior, why the facilities are superior, what's happening, blah, 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 and all that stuff. They also followed the target population. And this is basically because it's a tourist one, it's a family kind of a holiday. It's the mums who generally book the holiday, and they actually are active on earlier on Facebook and then on Insta. So they decided to present quirky videos of employees, service experience, customer testimonials on both these two channels. So even before a mom or a parent decided to book a holiday, they were actually being very, very present in all the channels that their clients wanted them to be. And in those channels, they were actually putting those messages which were addressing the fears that the family, uh, you know, package or the family unit would actually have. So if I am coming with my family, there are things that I'm afraid of. I'm worried about the quality of food, the quality of the rooms, how clean the bathrooms, and so on and so forth. So they started bringing all that into what do you call the advertisements. But I'll talk about the strategy a bit later. Once they do that, then they said, okay, when they come in, where do they come? How do we bring them in? What are the things they do? So they actually started looking at things that are like the questions that I asked, said like, how clean is the room? How clean is the restaurant? How's the food? What are the reviews? So then they started looking at what are the things that they can actually do to influence that. So they started putting pictures of this. They started putting videos in their website. When you start looking at it, view testimonials, it was a video testimonial rather than a text. So you know it's a person, it's not an actor, or it's not written. And then they started bringing in TripAdvisor and Expedia ratings and other things. And they had someone to look at that. And they started answering and responding to it effectively on the same day. And then once a resolution was achieved, they got the testimonial from the customer and they actually posted that on their uh, website on the bookings page. And they had multiple funnels within funnels. So you look at the rooms and then they actually said, okay, if you want to do this, these are some of the things that you could do. And these are some of the things that you could buy. So they started bundling and upselling quite a few things by, offering them the right kind of solutions. And then once they did that, they then said, okay, this is what you can do. And if you are considering this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And then once they did the purchase, how you actually brought them on board. They actually got an email campaign going after someone booked, saying, "Hey, 20 days to go. Looking forward to seeing you," and so on and so forth. And they started building a personal relationship with every guest that was coming through their email campaigns. And they started using text message as they got closer to say what it is. And if they were organizing cabs for the guest to be picked up, when the driver picks them up, he would call the hotel and then he'd say, I'm picking them up. So when they actually walk up to the receptionist would say, Welcome, Mrs. Jennifer, or Mr. Adam, or whatever. They, the experience was personalized. And once that was done, they started building on other bits and pieces by constantly seeking feedback. What can we do better? You know, it is a very, very significant way to build a relationship, to then getting them to recommend people to come and visit their hotel. So they have built this purely through word of mouth. And great customer experience. So they went through this whole journey by looking at various aspects and started addressing each element by looking at what are the things that we are doing from a process point of view. What is working? What is not working? How can we change things? How can we impact it? What is the uh, feeling that is actually coming if things don't work? And what is the fear that is getting triggered? How do we address that fear? What do we say? What do we do? So they meticulously planned the whole thing. And when I say all this, it sounds like they took years. It's not the case. The whole exercise was completed within a day. And then the strategies that were created were implemented within a few weeks. It's as simple as that. But then it's about brainstorming and understanding what your customer wants and offering it. Like for example, when if they knew that the guests were traveling, they would send them a text, expect a time of arrival, what time have you left, so they know that the guest will come by that time. So they would have everything ready, check in everything ready, so the guest does not have to wait. And if they're coming with the children in a car, they actually built a decompression zone for the kids where they actually had games, and the parents were given a welcome drink. They were made to sit, they were made to relax, and then when they were relaxing, all the check-in process was done and dusted. So they started planning individual elements like that. And it was just a, you know, it was just amazing to watch. I was privileged to actually see the transition of what they were doing with their data, with the inputs, how they went back to the basics to understand what can we do to address this feeling, which is can then trigger this. So the conversations were what is it actually going to change? How will it make them feel? What is the fear that we are addressing? So that level of detail was, built into the system. They got their marketing people involved to write messages, and that was used in their email campaigns. So it was built on a very, very solid foundation of we need to provide the best experience for our customers. And they truly believed it and wanted to go all out to get things done. And then they empowered their employees in the process. Because if it's the humanic side of things that is not working, they wanted to ensure that people were empowered to take decisions. They could actually take the decision and then justify it later. If it is most of the times, because it was done in the interest of the customer, of course, within guardrails, it would be accepted. So employees felt valued. So that was creating a great experience. And when you do this, you start building more than satisfaction. You start building a constant stream of loyal customers who are committed to coming to you. Because there are hotels which have got brands. I mean, a branded hotel could actually have operate in multiple locations. But if you're a solo player or you've got a few hotels in a few cities, how do you ensure that you capture the essence of what you're doing and use that and replicate it in multiple cities just to get the right kind of customers and provide them with amazing experiences. And that's what the intent of this exercise was, and they achieved it significantly. And what they did, as I told you, spelled out clearly to be done, how we are going to do it, and how it's going to work by bringing teams together across departments. They ensured that they created a consistent experience. They constantly asked for feedback and used that to immediately address problems. And then they made a big shout about it. They actually said, "Oh, this is what we said, this is what we've done, and this is," and then that was published on the website. They had meetings in the mornings to discuss about complaints and compliments. And they actually sent personal letters, greetings, all those things, anything that you read out, like the John Lewis of the world. So they started mimicking a lot of things like John Lewis, like First Direct, what they were doing, all those best practices were imbibed, and they started building this. And they were always on a journey to refine because, providing great experience is always going to go in one direction, or depending on which side you look at. If you want to improve it drastically, then you have an opportunity to do that time and again, time and again. Because these days, now with the advent of AI, with the impact of technology, you can start providing customized, personalized experiences for your clients and customers. So that's what they are doing. Now, what can we learn from that? If you're an organization and you want to improve the journey of your customers, you should start by looking at, okay, who are my clients? What are the persona? What are the stages? So normally what I do is basically I ask people to list the steps. So it's an 8-step process or a 10-step process. In those 10 steps, what are the places where they come in contact with you, your system, your service, or your product? So you identify the touch points. And when that happens, how are they feeling? What is happening there? So if it's a product or a service, maybe you can employ a few mystery shoppers to go through this experience of the journey that you are providing to identify the pain that is causing in those touch points, how people are feeling when things don't work. Once you know that, you can then start addressing them. You can start building a clear plan to focus what needs to be done, who will do it, and come up with a plan and implement. And it is not going to work if your teams are not aligned. So you need to ensure that people across departments, if you've got a huge organization, then or a reasonably sizable organization, then you need to ensure that interdepartmental relationships are brilliant, and then you use that to achieve what you set out to achieve. Then, as I mentioned earlier, this is at this point in time, we are living in the age of data and insights. So you can actually start using predictive modeling to personalize and customize the experience of your clients so that they are loyal, committed, satisfied, and they become your brand ambassadors. Thank you. And before we go, what I would like to say is we have our next clinic on the 19th, where we're actually going to be focusing on leadership and how they have used data. One or two, I'm going to be talking about one or two companies where they've used data to understand the quality of relationships that exist within an organization and how they used it to bring the best out of their employees. And just to remind, if you're an organization that is trying to improve your strategy, your customers or employee side of things, we have a free productivity audit. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you will see that link, or you can reach out to me or to my VA, and we can send out the link to you. You can complete it. Once you complete it, the system will generate a report which is automatic. And if you need to actually get some feedback, please feel free to get in touch. This is not a sales call. This is not a sales pitch. It's something that we are passionate about. And if you want to do that, please reach out to us. Thank you.